Welcome to Worthy Ones, the video series where I share all my thoughts and opinions on the newest issue ones that I read for the current comic book week and deem them worthy or not worthy. Guys, I'm Mike Spider-Slayer. Welcome back to Comic Book Corner 2.0. If you love daily comic book content, you like me helping you make decisions on what comic books to buy, you came to the right place. Hit the subscribe button. There is another huge comic book week this week, and we have 9 new number ones to talk about. Were they worthy? Were they not worthy? Let's find out right now. White Tiger Reborn issue 1, and this is the return of the White Tiger. It's a 32-page comic for the price of $5. This one's written by Daniel Jose Older, and the art is done by Bruno Abadais. Now, when it came to this comic book, I'm not going to lie, I thought it was a mini-series. I did not realize it was only a one-shot. So I was really disappointed with that because I hate when you come up with a series for a character, or I should say a comic book for a character that doesn't get enough panel time or series of their own to really flesh out the character. Now, a lot of us might know White Tiger as a character that's pretty much like a team-like character. So this one shot definitely explores the character a little bit more, where Ava has been and what's going on with her and her connections to her brother and whatnot. But this was a one shot where I was kind of like bored, and I felt like, well, without it continuing or having a mini series here, I was like, what's really the point? And you know, it's very much dialogue heavy because they're trying to get the story all within one issue. The adversary that she fights here was nothing really impressive. It does change the character's power sets a little bit, but at the end of the day, this book for me was not worthy. Yeah, I feel like for the price of $5 here, you could bypass this. You're not going to really miss anything. Yes, you get to learn about where the character is at this moment in time and what her power sets are, but you can easily spend your money on something else this week that will be more entertaining and you'll get more out of it going forward. So at the end of the day, even though this wasn't like a horrible book, it's very much middle ground, very forgettable. I gave this one a C- this week. So did you guys pick this one up? Let me know in the comments below. G.I. Joe Cold Slither. This is issue 1. Didn't know what I was expecting out of this one. 32 pages for the price of $4. This one is written by Tim Seeley, and the art one is done by Juan Cabal. The artwork is fine. It does what it needs to do. It's very serviceable here as we get to see just a different mix of characters, whether it's the Dreadnoks, it's, you know, Zartan, Cobra Commander, Destro. You wind up getting to see all those different characters in here. Now, the fun thing about this comic book is if you're a G.I. Joe fan and you've watched a G.I. Joe cartoon, I think there was an episode that I vaguely remember that the Dreadnoks were an actual band in an episode trying to manipulate the world, you know, by creating this like cult following, subliminal messaging type of situation. And you get to see that here, I guess, after that whole situation, as we get to see a documentary that's happening with this reporter by the name of Hector, I think his name was, but it's more like a Geraldo type of character, or a 60 minutes documentary on just kind of, you know, discovering where these characters are now. And it was really kind of comical, right? I actually enjoyed it. It was a good time. I know it's a one shot, but nevertheless, at the end of the day, this book was worthy. Now, unlike the last one shot that I read, I just felt like this one's pacing was a little bit better. It just seemed like you wanted to know where these characters are based on an event that happened in the past. I don't know if I'm a little bit more biased to this one, but again, if you're a G.I. Joe fan, I think you should pick this one up. Now, if you're not really a G.I. Joe fan, this is something that you can skip. I did like it. It wasn't like the best comic book ever, but it was fun, and I wound up giving this one a B-. It was just entertaining. Like I said, could you spend your money elsewhere? Yeah, absolutely. G.I. Joe fans, I think you'll appreciate this. Gotham Academy First Year Issue 1. Now, it's been a very, very long time since I read the very first series of Gotham Academy. I pretty much forgot everything that was going on, and maybe I should have read it going into this year one comic book to get me more familiar with the characters. But if this is a year one book, maybe it should do a really good reintroduction, and you can get to know these characters this way, and then maybe read that original trade. This book is 40 pages for the price of $5, written by Becky Cloonan and Carl Kerschel and Brendan Fletcher, and the art is done by Marco Ferreri. The artwork is totally fine in this comic book. It does what it needs to do. It showcases the characters in play in this comic book, and you wind up getting to see, obviously, Bruce Wayne in here because he's connected to the Academy. And really what this comic book is focused on is really mainly one character by the name of Olive Silverlock. And right from the very start, we see that there's something very off about this character. I don't remember quite what it is, but she constantly sees these images of things being on fire, right? So obviously she has a mental disorder, and her mom has been locked away at Gotham as well, and that's why she ends up in this academy to begin with. So very interesting, and we do wind up getting to see some of the other supporting cast members in this book as you get reintroduced to them. One of my favorite characters, I must say, in comics, I would say, is Kyle, because Kyle is a tennis player, and we wind up getting to see him show off his little tennis skills in the comic book to Olive, and we get to see that she's actually making a friend in here. So I kind of do like these comics that have to deal with high school and coming of age stories. So I'm going to say that this book is worthy. Especially when you get to the end of this comic book, we wind up seeing a particular villain here that interacts with Olive as well, and it kind of sets the stage for things to come for this series. So I'm very curious of all the other characters that are going to enter in this comic and the development of it. So definitely looking forward to it. If you've never read Gotham Academy before, like I said, you could read this one, and then once this series is done, then you could probably read the original. But if you want a better understanding of the characters, just read that original trade first. I'm going to give this one a solid B. I really enjoyed it. So we'll see what happens going forward with it. Kill All Immortals 2. This is issue 1. This book is published by Dark Horse. It's 32 pages for the price of $5. This book is written by Zach Kaplan, and the art is done by Fico Azio. When it comes to this comic book, you can always expect bloody and gory action. I mean, these are Vikings. This is a Viking family. So you're just going to always expect very bloody and gory stuff. You're going to expect a lot of fighting. That's what you got in the very first volume of this, where we got to see Frey, who is the female Viking daughter who rebelled against her family. Now, in this series, we wind up getting to see an enemy that arises to try to take on the family business. And it was kind of quite interesting. And now it was good to see Frey back in the mix of things, trying to do this fundraiser, and that's where we come across the main adversary threatening her business, the livelihood, and everything else. And then we get to see her brothers come and team up with her, and again do some fighting action against this bad guy and the bad guy's army here. And then you kind of get a surprise at the end who makes its return. Now, in the last volume, these Vikings were actually immortal, but because of Frey's rebelliousness, she killed or destroyed the tree? I think it was the tree of life or something like that makes them immortal. So now they're mortal. So now they're like regular human beings. They can die, so they got to be careful on what they do. So do they survive? Do they fail? I don't know. We'll see. But for now, this book was worth. I think it definitely considers a second try. I don't think this blew me out of the water. It's very much in a way, it is a different story, but very similar because you can always expect some hack and slash stuff going on with these Vikings, you know? And that's kind of fun, but it's almost like a very repetitive nature with this series in general. So I don't know. We'll see how the story continues to develop here. I wound up giving this one a C+. It's okay for now. Now, here is a comic book I was very interested in. This is Marvel Comics Spider-Man Noir issue 1. It's a 32-page comic for the price of $5. Now, I was interested in this because Erik Larsen is the writer here. He currently writes Savage Dragon. Also, back in the day, he drew Amazing Spider-Man, which were some of my favorite Amazing Spider-Man comics. Would have I preferred him to draw the Spider-Man Noir? Maybe so, okay? The art here is done by Andrea Briccardo. Now, this book really opens up with a lot of action, but I almost felt like it was like too much, right? It was just like, hey, I'm Spider-Man Noir. It takes place in the 1930s. I'm going to be, you know, this young and quippy guy. And it's kind of like, all right, well, what's the point here besides me just firing my gun and taking out the bad guys, right? Like that was a good maybe 8 to 10 pages of this comic book, right? So then it dives into who Peter Parker is in this world, as he is a private investigator. Of course, he's got no money. He's got to pay the rent. He's down on his luck. So it's the same old stuff that you've always known with Peter Parker, very much like an origin story. You wind up getting Gwen Stacy in this world make her appearance, and Peter Parker actually is doing a job for Gwen because she has to figure out, or he has to figure out, why Captain Stacy has died, okay? Now, Peter Parker is not involved with Mary Jane. He's broken up with her in this world as well. And you spend a lot of this book just kind of introducing the players, the characters, the investigation, and things like that. Besides the opening pages, when it comes to action, it just was a very slow comic book. And at the end of the day, I just did not find this book worthy. Like I said, I probably would have loved to see someone else write this book and maybe Erik Larsen draw it to bring me back to my 90s, you know, nostalgia days on how he used to draw Spider-Man. It would have been cool to see him draw Spider-Man Noir, but the storytelling here was just very dull. The pacing was off, and at the end, you wind up getting to see like, ooh, who is this Scorpion gang, you know? And it's like, was Captain Stacy involved in it, or was Spider-Man involved in it? It was just kind of slow and just, I don't know, man. I couldn't get into it. So at the end of the day, like I said, I'm not going to read issue 2. I wound up giving this one a D+. This one was just a letdown for me. So if you watch my series called Top 10 Most Pulled Comic Books of the Week, I do pick a sleeper pick, which I think could be a really good comic book, but sometimes it could be a bad one. And I was hoping that Spirits of Violence issue 1 would be that sleeper pick. It's 32 pages, $5. I did have my reservations for it just because Benjamin Percy was not writing it. Excuse me. Sabir Parazada is the writer here, and the art is done by Paul Davison. Listen, guys, when it comes to the artwork in this comic book, here is 2 pages where I was like, what is happening? Like, what is this art, right? I'm just kind of like, man, oh man, this is rough. And then there's other pages that are okay, right? But you wind up getting to see all these different ghostwriters. This, for me, was probably the best out of the artwork in the series. But it has to do with all these ghostwriters coming together to try to stop the spirit of violence. And you wind up finding out who the spirit of violence actually is, or maybe it was revealed in previous issues of other miniseries. But this book itself was not worthy. I mean, this book was just an absolute bore fest. I could not stand learning about all the lore. And even though I read all of the miniseries in here, I was just like, oh my God, this is just it just seems like a convoluted mess. This is almost like a Ghost Rider verse, right? Just having a book with all the Ghost Riders in it without the main writer, who is Benjamin Percy, who wrote most of these series to begin with. The interactions were just dull and boring, and it just was just, oh my God, this was god awful. And with this weird artwork, I'm sorry, I just could not get into this book. This was definitely just a huge disappointment for me after wonderful reads that had to do with the Ghost Rider universe, like Helverine and Ghost Rider, and even, I don't know, Spirit of Vengeance or whatever it was, which I thought was okay as well. Like, there's been just a lot of other good books that has come to the Ghost Rider franchise, and this just did not deliver in any stretch of the imagination. Unfortunately, I gave this one an F. This one failed for me in so many levels. I'm sorry I even mentioned it for Sleeper Pick of the Week. But if you liked it, totally fine, but let me know what you thought of it. Now it's time in that show where we're talking about the heavy hitter books for Marvel and DC, right? These event books. And the first one we're talking about today is X-Men Age of Revelation Overture. This is issue 1. It's 40 pages for this comic book, $6. It's written by Jed MacKay. The art is done by Ryan Stegman. There is a slew of characters in this comic book, right? And if you've been reading the X-Men series, it's, I would say, loosely leading up to this. You didn't really get an indication that you were going to get an event until it was announced. And last year, I want to say it was last year, we wound up getting Doug Ramsey, who is now the new Apocalypse. And you got this brief mini series, and you're kind of like wondering at that time, like, well, why is this happening to him? And it disappeared for an entire year. And then all of a sudden, he makes his way back into the X-Men comics. And he's kind of the driving force of why this event exists. So it's very little lead up that leads into this event. Here is your artwork that goes into the book. Obviously, we get to see our X-Men in this world 10 years into this world. And it is a very much apocalyptic setting in here where something happens to where it either causes humans to become mutants or basically you die. And we have all these different territories, and we wind up getting to see our mutants become this rebellion force. And there's just a lot of stuff going on in this comic book. It really introduces like all the players that are going to be involved in this Age of Revelation, and that's why all of these other X-Men books are going to exist, right? So even in this book right here where you have the checklist, you get to see like all the territories and everything like that of what's going on. But at the end of the day, this is something that I'm really, really on the fence about. Like, I don't know if this is worthy or not worthy. I think if you're gonna want to try some of these comic books, these miniseries, I would say it's worthy. If you're willing to pass on the X-Men until the new, I would say, status quo for them comes out, I think you're fine with that too. You might not miss completely anything when it comes to this. This could be just a story that you read to enjoy or whatever the case may be. But I don't think it's really necessary. I think this is an attempt to restart the X-Men once again because Rise from the Ashes wasn't very successful to begin with. And now you're just going to get a bunch of stories that are replacing all the other X titles for right now. And I don't know, man. X-Men needs to find its space again. It needs to do something to get readers like excited. Does this do that? Let me know in the comments below. When I got done reading this, I was like, okay, like, do I care? Because none of this is going to matter when it's over. I don't think it is, right? And again, it doesn't even really lead into anything. Like, there was no lead up. It's just like, uh-oh, DCKO has like their major event that's coming out. What are we going to do to answer that? I mean, it felt like that. I know that we have comic books and stories that are planned well in advance, but I don't know. It kind of seems that way to me. It just doesn't lead up to the same way as DCKO does, right? That's just my thought and opinion there. I thought this was very average. I thought this was very forgettable. It just kind of introduces you to all of the characters for those 16 other books that are going to come out. I gave this one a very average C. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Justice League, the Omega Act Special. This is issue 1. 44 pages for the price of $6. This book advertises that this is it. This leads into the event of the year for DC. It's written by Joshua Williamson, and the art is done by Yasmin Putri. When it comes to the artwork on here, it definitely delivers. You get to see all of the characters that you can expect, right? You get to see the Justice League. You get to see Time Trapper, Doomsday. You got beautiful 2-page spreads in here. Wonderful coloring in this comic book as well. So there's a lot of great things in this comic book, right? Now, when I was reading it, I'm like, here we go. It's going to lead into the tournament and everything else. And it kind of really didn't do that. Everything that you read in this, that you've read in DC right now has kind of already happened. And we're kind of going back in time to the point where Booster Gold is like trying to convince the Justice League that there's this danger, that there's this threat. And we kind of like already know this stuff. And we wind up getting to see a fun travel adventure with Booster Gold and Flash, right? And them dealing with the what's it called? The Legion. Jesus, I totally forgot that. And meanwhile, we're dealing with a story that takes place in the past as well. So at the end of the day, even though it was fun, you kind of knew all this was going on already, and it just leads to the point where Booster Gold is just like, okay, this is what we need to do. We need to hear this, and we all need to work together. So even though this book didn't meet my expectations, it still was a worthy comic book, right? I thought we were going to get them, like, I don't know, maybe entering the chamber and them getting ready to fight. And it was more just like a time travel adventure more than anything. It wasn't anything that we already didn't know what's going on in the world of DC that's been leading up to this. So that's why I think I had my expectations set a little bit high for this. But I think if maybe you haven't read some of the stuff previously, I think it gives you an idea of what's going on. But going back to leading into a major event, Justice League, Superman, Justice League Unlimited, all these books, whatever it is, they've all built up to this event. And it leaves you being super excited for it, right? It just didn't come out of nowhere. And that's what I appreciate what DC is doing with the KO event, right? Especially with the brackets and all that other stuff. So at the end of this day, again, this didn't meet the expectation that I thought it was, but it was still a good read. I gave this one a solid B this week. Do you guys agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Absolute Evil. This is issue 1. And this is 36 pages for the price of $6. This book is written by Al Ewing, and the art is done by Giuseppe Colmacoli. Here's kind of what you can expect when the artwork is shown to you. And this is really the real legitimate first crossover when it comes to the Absolute universe. Everything that you've been reading in the Absolute comic books has led to this one-shot. And if you were on the fence about buying this because it is a one-shot, please, if you've been reading Absolute, you need to read this comic book. There is a lot of story, and it's well worth your money and your time to invest in this. We wind up getting to see all the major players, like villains, in this comic book, like Veronica Cale leading this meeting with Roz and Joker and Eleanor Thawne and everybody else that's in here on describing how they should work together in order to stop all of the other absolute heroes like Batman and Superman and, Wonder Woman and whatnot. And seeing all the interactions between the villains in this world was absolutely outstanding here. I'm not going to give away any spoilers because this book reveals a lot. And something happens in this comic where you're just kind of have your mouth dropped. And it makes this book absolutely worthy. And I can't wait to see what's in store for the future when it comes to the Absolute Universe. But when I can tell you that we're getting ready to cross over universes, I think we're going to get there very soon. And that's okay with me because we spent an entire year with all of these characters in their own separate books. Now I think we have enough characters to the point where they can cross over from time to time. But seeing introduction to certain characters in this world now, man, it left me jonesing for more. So this one gets an A+ from me. So there are all my thoughts and opinions on the newest issue ones this week. And if you guys want to find out what my pick of the week is, you're going to have to go on to Monday's episode of After the Poll as I cover the rest of the comic books, whether it has to do with Marvel, DC, and independent comics. And yes, I will throw in there the Worthy One books, and we will discuss which comic book gets pick of the week. So tune in on Monday, guys. And as always, I'll leave you more content right here for you to click on. Support those local comic shops. Keep buying, keep collecting, but always remember, read your comic books so we can have great comic conversation just like we did today. Guys, enjoy your Thursday, and I will see you on the next video.